Hello everyone. This is a Web IDE Engineering Sync, and this week we're going to be talking about Playwright, an integration test in the Web IDE. Um, so this is the Playwright MR, and I want to talk about first some like guiding principles that I used to when I was thinking about this type of test in the Web IDE. So the advantage of having this test is that we are testing the Web IDE in a real browser, and then we can test the integration of the VS Code fork with our Web IDE VS Code extension and the workflow extension and the GitLab REST API. But there are some limitations when we are implementing this test because we don't have, unlike the Capybara specs and the QA specs in the GitLab Rails application, we cannot create objects in a GitLab instance. We cannot say the test is going to start every time with a new project that is predictably uh, the same data with the same files, etc. So we would be using the same technique that the editor's extension team is using for the VS Code extension, that it just connects to GitLab.com and it uses an existing test. However, that makes a test in, unstable and unpredictable because those projects are changing in production and we don't have control. Um, like the test data is constantly changing. So the first principle with the integration test is that I'm trying not to think of them as end to end. That we are gonna test always the how the Web ID interacts with the rest of GraphQL API. If we have to mock those APIs, um, just to make the test more reliable than we do. That's super important. I think that it's safe to mock those APIs because they are very stable now. Um, I'm not expecting the API that returns the content of a file to change over time, or the API that creates a commit, or the API that returns the file tree. All of those APIs are super stable, and if they change over time, we can update the text fixtures. But the main priority of this test is to see how all the extensions on the VS Code integrate, and um, and yeah, and then like stability. That if we are interacting with an API that is unstable, then we prefer to mock the API. So let me now give you a quick demo of Playwright. So we have this command that is this a wrapper over the Playwright command. By the way, the reason that this is called I'm calling them integration testing is because of that. Because like we are testing the integration of components, but not necessarily trying to test like mocking where we need. Instead of like thinking that we are gonna test like we are gonna implement a black box text test end to end. So Playwright is very cool. It has a this UI test runner where we can see it is taking some time to run. Okay, here it is. We can just like select from the test suite the tests that are available, and we can check how the test is executing. Um, the idea is that you will define in your environment file, which is the GitLab instance that you're targeting, the project and the branch, and you provide an access token, and then the test goes and do its thing. In this case, I'm using this GitLab shell project and testing against the GDK. Um, but in the file content is the part that I mocked. Because if I'm targeting a, let's say, GitLab.com, it's very likely that the next time that I open contributing, the content might be different. So I just use some Playwright tools to mock that API call and return a test picture. Something that is very, very cool about Playwright is in its integration with VS Code. Debugging the test is super easy. We can set a breakpoint. If you install the extension, you can go to the Playwright tab. Actually, I think it's here. Okay, and you can say like, oh, I'm gonna debug the test. Oops, but it's not. Hmm. Okay, I don't know why that button didn't work. Yeah, you can like start the test here. I don't know why the debugging. Okay, for some reason I had to run the test first before debugging works. But look, like it's gonna give you a headed browser, and then you can see like visibly what where the test is, and then let's go to the place where it loads the example up, and then it fills the values, and here it is. So it's like super easy to debug and work on them. Something. Huh?
Sorry, I just said nice. This is super cool.
It's definitely very usable as a tool. And so yeah, that's a test runner. Now let's talk a little bit of the implementation details. Um, so I let me see, I'm using an old URL. The Playwright documentation is very good. And one of the best practices that it recommends is using the page object model. Basically, rather than writing these as these element finders and queries in the test itself, uh, we encapsulate them in a page. So you are writing the test from the point of view of using like domain terms. For example, in the Web IDE, saying that I'm going to open a file by clicking in the file explorer. I want to see if a tab in the text editor is visible. But the underlying implementation of those concepts is encapsulated in a class. For example, this is what a test looks like. Um, I want to mock a request to get a raw file. That's how it's called in the REST API. Then I go to the Web IDE, I initialize it, I open a file, get a file tab, and then check that in the text editor that there is a text editor open for that file and that it contains the file content that I mocked in the REST API. And the underlying implementation of these methods contains all the actual selectors and the playwright commands. Something that is super important is how we find the elements in the web page. I'm trying to like another best practice that Playwright recommends is to always use accessibility selectors. Um, if we go to the Web IDE, I don't know why. Oh, well, the server is not started. It's- Okay. I highly recommend that when you're running your own test, you enable the accessibility view in Chrome.
Mhm.
So what this gives you, this accessibility tree, is a way of looking at a web page from the point of view of an assistive technology tool, where you can like identify elements by the name that appears and the type of element that well the type of UI control, like a text box or things like that. VS Code is actually a very accessible IDE. As you can see here, let me remove this breakpoint. It always identifies every part of the interface with the proper control type, and it assigns names to everything. So when you're using accessibility selectors, you ensure that the test is written from the point of view of the user, rather than using like CSS selectors or data test IDs. We always try to use like these name-based selectors. Also, like it decouples the test from the implementation because there will always be a file explorer that is a three element, right? So regardless of the underlying implementation, you can always rely on these names. Um, yes, like I'm trying like to explain as much as possible in a short time, but what do you think? What do you think so far?
It's great. I love this because working with CSS selectors, for example, is so something that's really hard to read and really understand. You kind of have to kind of create helper functions to sort of encapsulate that, but it just seems like too much. So this is really nice. And yeah, I've worked with Playwright a little bit in the past, and I've always really liked it. I also really like their retry capabilities. I think that's quite nice too. So yeah, this is super exciting. And yeah, I think regarding the mocking and stuff, I think that's a great idea as well. Like we already, I mean, we do have like our end-to-end test in Capybara, right? That kind of like does the full suite. So like we don't have to do like, we don't have to kind of implement it end-to-end at this level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely agree. I also, since I've been using RubyMine a lot more, I went to go test to make sure that, it had the same type of plugins over there. So it looked like it did. So, yeah, like I think the approach seems pretty good. And I do like the idea of the integration tests. I know I've been in some of the calls when we've discussed how with front end there's not as many dedicated integration tests. So yeah.
Yeah, I hope that having these tests, even if they are mocking certain parts of the API, not all of them, we can catch errors earlier in the Web ID before like they're reaching production or because at that point when they already reach the Rails application, it's very expensive like to fix. So hopefully we are shifting to the left a little bit of that feedback.
That's great.
Um, yeah, since we have a few minutes left, let me show you a little bit of the request mocking API. So Playwright has a very powerful request mocking. I created this utility class, and the idea is that over time we are expanding it with more methods. It has some helper utility functions to build API endpoint URLs. And in the case, like the first one that I mocked is the raw file request, because the content of a file can change. In the future, I can imagine that we are gonna, when we write a test for code suggestions and chat, that's also like non-deterministic. So I think that it could be useful that we mock the GraphQL APIs, but we are still testing how the VS Code extension integrates with the Web IDE. Um, in the MR, I linked to the next follow-up issues. We have one. This MR doesn't set up CI, uh, running the test on CI. So this is gonna happen in this follow-up issue. And I also created other follow-up issues to actually write the tests. So those could be the next step.
Um, Out of curiosity, sorry in advance, I haven't looked deeply into the MR, but I'm curious how you spun up the like example app within Playwright.
Oh, so Playwright has a configuration option to indicate the test server.
Oh, nice.
So if there is a server that is already started, it will reuse it. Otherwise, it will build the example app and then start the HTTP server.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's really like very complete. It's very
Yeah,
has
they thought
everything
of
that we need.
everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I guess this is kind of associate level question is more okay, so like I understand how Playwright's being used here, but I guess my question is what is the difference between Playwright and Capybara? Like what is like the functionality there?
Um, Capybara is it uses a tool that is called Selenium. Um, that it is a middle layer between the web browser and the actual framework that you use to write the test. In the case of Playwright, if I remember correctly, they interface directly with the web browsers.
Mhm.
All the web browsers have a standard API that is called WebDriver. And basically, like Playwright communicates directly with the WebDriver rather than using the Selenium that is a middle layer.
Mhm.
I also think that Playwright is bigger in scope and functionality because Capybara can only gives you ways of selecting elements in the web browser and executing JavaScript. But Playwright, as you see, like it has like mocking network requests. It has a test runner. Capybara uses RSpec um, behind the scenes to run the test, but this one comes like with its own test runner as well.
Alright.
Yeah. It's a whole framework to write tests. Cool. So we are on time, but it's good that we probably covered everything. Um, do you have any other remarks or questions?
I feel like I might have, but I just don't know how to like I think it's all in my head, so I'll take a moment to digest and I'll look at your MR and leave some questions there. But
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
we can
super
do it
awesome.
async.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited that we have this level of testing now. It will help us a lot with the VS Code fork. At some point, what I would like us to have is that you create an integration MR to update VS Code, and you just trust that the test pass.
very nice.
Yeah, Cool. So then I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much, folks. Uh, and see you next time.
Thanks, Enrique. Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.